We were a group of friends, excited about our hiking trip through the Appalachian Trail. It was supposed to be an adventure, a break from our mundane lives. Little did we know that the woods held more than just the promise of natural beauty. The day started well. We navigated the trail, shared laughs, and enjoyed the breathtaking scenery. Our spirits were high as we ventured deeper into the woods, the dense foliage creating a sense of isolation that both thrilled and unnerved us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we realized we had strayed off the marked path. No big deal, we thought. We're seasoned hikers. We can find our way back. But as we stumbled through the darkening forest, a sense of disorientation set in. The trees closed in around us, and the once comforting sounds of nature became haunting whispers in the night. That's when we stumbled upon it, an encampment hidden amidst the trees. Tents, makeshift shelters, and a dim glow of a fire that flickered eerily in the darkness. We hesitated, unsure of whether to approach or retreat. Curiosity got the better of us, and we cautiously moved closer, hoping for some friendly faces in the wilderness. The encampment, however, was not what we expected. Faces turned towards us, revealing weathered, suspicious eyes. The people there weren't friendly hikers or nature enthusiasts. They were a ragtag group with a look that hinted at a hard life. We exchanged nervous greetings, and the air thickened with an unspoken tension. They offered us a seat by the fire, and against our better judgment, we accepted. The night grew colder, and the warmth of the fire beckoned. As we sat, the atmosphere shifted from tense to downright uncomfortable. Their conversation was laced with cryptic remarks, and our attempts to steer it towards safer topics were met with vague responses. I noticed a few of them eyeing our gear, sizing us up as if assessing our worth. My gut told me we were in a dangerous situation, but we were deep in the woods, far from any help. The unease settled in, and we began to feel like unwelcome guests in a place we shouldn't have stumbled upon. The encampment's leader, a grizzled man with a penetrating gaze, started asking about our plans, our route, and our belongings. Red flags waved in my mind, and I felt the urgency to leave. Excusing ourselves, we stood up, thanked them for their company, and made a hasty retreat into the night. But the darkness of the forest seemed to close in around us. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound, became a source of paranoia. We quickened our pace, retracing our steps, desperate to put distance between us and that unsettling encampment. As we walked, a realization hit us. We were being followed. The footsteps, muffled but unmistakable, echoed in the silence of the woods. Panic set in, and we broke into a run, our hearts pounding in sync with our hurried footsteps. The encampment's inhabitants were on our tail, and the forest became a labyrinth of shadows and fear. We pushed ourselves, stumbling through the underbrush, our breaths labored and desperate. The darkness seemed endless, and the pursuers remained relentless, their presence an ominous force in the night. Exhausted and terrified, we finally stumbled onto the main trail. A surge of relief washed over us, and we didn't stop until we reached the safety of a nearby town. The encounter with that encampment left us scarred, a chilling reminder that even in the seemingly serene wilderness, danger could lurk beneath the trees. The Appalachian Trail, once a symbol of adventure, had become a haunting memory. Me and my partner decided we needed a break from the constant buzz of technology. Thought it'd be nice to rent a cozy cabin in the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. You know, just us and nature. Turned out, it was more than we bargained for. The cabin was nice, quaint, surrounded by towering trees. But as we settled in, we noticed this off-grid community nearby. They had their own little world, cut off from the hustle and bustle. Seemed peaceful at first, everyone doing their own thing. One evening, we decided to explore. As we approached the community, people stared at us, their eyes telling us we didn't belong. It wasn't the friendly nod you'd expect. It was something darker, colder. We tried to mingle, blend in, but the residents kept to themselves. There was this tension in the air, like they were guarding some hidden secret. We brushed it off, thinking maybe they were just protective of their way of life. Night fell, and we heard strange whispers outside our cabin. Couldn't make out the words, but the tone sent shivers down our spines. Thought it might be some local tradition, so we tried to ignore it and sleep. Next morning, we woke up to find symbols scratched on our cabin door. Looked like some kind of warning. We started feeling unwelcome, on edge. But we weren't ready for what came next. The community started watching us, not hiding it anymore. Their eyes followed our every move, like we were prey. We confronted them, asked what was going on, but they just smirked, like they were enjoying our discomfort. Then, we discovered a hidden room in our cabin, a passage leading to who knows where. It was like stumbling upon their secret world. We couldn't resist exploring, had to know what they were hiding. As we ventured through the passage, the air got colder, thicker. We reached an underground chamber where they held meetings. Candles flickered, and their faces were masked in shadows. The atmosphere screamed malevolence. Turns out, they had this dark agenda, a plan to force everyone who stumbled upon their community into submission. We were next in line. Panic set in as they closed in, surrounding us. We were trapped, no escape. But we fought. Pushed our way through, sprinted back to our cabin. Packed our things in a frenzy. They chased us, yelling threats, but we made it out, leaving that sinister community behind. We reported what happened to the police, but there was no trace of the off-grid community when they investigated. It was like they vanished, leaving us with nightmares that still haunt our quietest moments. Me and the boy, we decided to hit the Uinta Mountains for a hunting trip. You know, just a father-son bonding thing. Little did we know, it was going to turn into something straight out of a nightmare. We set up camp, got the gear ready, thinking it'd be a peaceful time in the wild. The Uintas are known for that, right? The crisp air, the smell of pine, and the thrill of the hunt. It started off just like that. We'd been up there for a couple of days, tracking game, setting up our little hunting spots. It was good, just me and the boy, sharing stories and waiting for a decent shot. That's when we first noticed them, the other group of hunters. At first, we thought, no big deal, right? Plenty of game for everyone. But something felt off about those guys. They were too close for comfort, like they were shadowing us, watching our every move. It put us on edge. Then, one evening, we're back at camp, and these guys show up. No friendly greetings, just this cold stare. Turns out, they had their eyes on the same game we were after. A tense conversation ensued, but we figured, okay, we'll keep our distance, give each other some space. Night fell, and that's when things took a turn. We hear footsteps near our camp, twig snaps, but when we checked, nothing. It was like they were playing mind games with us. Paranoia kicked in, and we started taking turns keeping watch. The next day, as we're tracking a buck, shots ring out. Not ours. Those other guys were firing at something, or someone. Panic set in. We didn't know if they were shooting at us or what, so we hunkered down, trying to figure out our next move. As we circled back to camp, we found it in shambles. Tents torn, gear scattered, and those guys, they were there, smirking like they enjoyed wrecking our little setup. They claimed it was a mistake, a wild animal that got too close, but we knew better. From that point on, it was a survival game. We were outnumbered, And those hunters, they weren't out for game anymore. It was us they were after. We had to think smart, stay low, and avoid them at all costs. Days turned into a blur of hiding, tracking, and trying to outsmart those guys. We had to find a way out of those mountains. Every sound made our hearts race. Every rustle in the bushes could have been our last moment. We were just two regular guys, not soldiers or anything. We had to resort to drastic measures, taking detours, leaving false trails, anything to throw them off. But they were relentless, always a step behind. It was like they knew the terrain better, like the mountains were on their side. Nights were the worst. We hear whispers, chilling laughs echoing through the trees. They toyed with us, enjoying the fear they instilled. The boy, he was scared, and seeing fear in his eyes was tearing me apart. I was his dad, supposed to protect him from this stuff. We found a cave, hoping it would be our sanctuary. But even there, we couldn't catch a break. Those guys, they found us. Shots fired, echoing in the cavern, rocks crumbling as we ducked for cover. It was chaos. The boy, he was grazed by a bullet. Nothing serious, but it fueled this rage in me. We had to fight back. It was us or them. The wilderness, once serene and inviting, became a battleground. We managed to outsmart them one final time, slipping away in the darkness, leaving the Uintas behind. We reported the incident when we got back, but those guys were long gone, leaving us with this lingering fear that they could come back any time. The Uinta Mountains, they ain't the same for us anymore. What was supposed to be a simple hunting trip turned into this fight for survival. I decided to do a solo camping trip in the Ozark Mountains, Arkansas. Figured it would be a nice escape, reconnect with nature. Turns out, it was anything but peaceful. I set up my tent in this secluded spot, surrounded by the quiet of the woods. Everything seemed normal until I stumbled upon a makeshift camp a little ways off. It was no ordinary camp. These guys looked like hardcore survivalists. Had that rugged, intense vibe about them. Not wanting trouble, I tried to keep my distance. But as I hiked around, I must have accidentally uncovered their secret location. It was like a scene out of a thriller, and I was the unwitting protagonist. One evening, I started hearing rustling in the woods around my camp. Brushed it off initially, thought it was some wildlife. But as night fell, things got weirder. Shadows lurked in the darkness, figures moving silently between the trees. My gut told me something wasn't right. I could sense eyes on me. Paranoia crept in. Every snap of a twig, every distant murmur felt like a warning. I tried to sleep, but the crunching of leaves around me persisted. Next morning, I explored the woods cautiously, trying to shake off the unease. That's when I stumbled upon their camp, the survivalist crew. They stared at me like I'd unearthed their deepest secrets. Hostility lingered in the air. I tried to explain I was just camping, that I didn't mean to intrude. But these guys, they weren't buying it. They thought I was some spy or threat to their secret setup. They got aggressive, faces masked by suspicion. A tense standoff unfolded. I tried to retreat back to my tent, but they followed. It became clear they believed I was a threat, and in their eyes, I needed to be dealt with. Fear knotted me as I realized how precarious my situation had become. As I packed up my camp, their eyes never left me. The survivalists exchanged cryptic glances, a silent communication of their intentions. I was an outsider who had stumbled upon something I shouldn't have, and they weren't taking any chances. I hiked out of there as fast as my legs could carry me. The forest, which had once felt like a sanctuary, became a labyrinth of potential danger. Every sound made me jump, thinking they were on my tail. I knew I had to put as much distance as possible between me and their hostile camp. Days later, when I finally reached civilization, the paranoia lingered. I'd inadvertently stumbled upon a group of people who took their isolation seriously. There's this team of us, archaeologists eager to uncover the mysteries hidden beneath the soil of the Black Hills in South Dakota. We had all the gear, the excitement, ready to dig into the past. Little did we know, we were about to unearth something that should have stayed buried. The Black Hills have a history, you know? Native American legends and whatnot. But we were focused on the artifacts, the tangible proof of the past. Started with routine digs, finding pottery, tools, the usual stuff. We thought we hit the archaeological jackpot. As we dug deeper, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavy, charged with something we couldn't quite put our fingers on. The team started getting restless, uneasy, but we pressed on. We were archaeologists, after all, not superstitious folks. One day, we uncovered this ancient chamber. It was like stepping into another world. Murals adorned the walls, telling a story we struggled to comprehend. It was clear this wasn't just an ordinary find. The chamber felt alive with an ancient energy. As we continued our excavation, things started going sideways. Unexplained phenomena, weird sounds echoing in the tunnels. The team dismissed it at first, blaming it on fatigue and imagination. But deep down, we all felt it, this undercurrent of dread. Then, one by one, strange events intensified. Tools vanished, whispers echoed in empty corridors, and shadows seemed to move on their own. We were on edge, constantly glancing over our shoulders. Paranoia took hold of the team. Our leader, the guy who brought us here, he started changing. The stress got to him, I guess. His eyes became vacant, lost. He insisted we keep going, find what lay hidden in the heart of the chamber. We couldn't refuse. It was like an unseen force pushing us forward. The deeper we went, the more unsettling things became. The murals told a tale of some ancient ritual, a power that should have stayed locked away. We felt it stirring around us, a malevolent force that sought release. One night, as we delved into the heart of the chamber, it happened. The air crackled, and the leader, he just collapsed. Unconscious, lifeless. We rushed him out, fearing the worst, but he woke up with this strange look in his eyes, like something had taken root within him. From that moment, it all spiraled. The leader became obsessed, convinced he held the key to unlocking this ancient power. The rest of us, we were caught in his mad pursuit. The chamber seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and the once tight-knit team turned against each other. We should have left, packed up, and never looked back. But the force within that chamber, it gripped us, wouldn't let go. We became puppets to its malevolence. It played on our fears, our darkest desires, tearing the team apart from the inside. The final night, it all erupted. The leader, now consumed by the ancient force, summoned something beyond our understanding. The chamber shook, and shadows danced on the walls. We were witness to a power that defied explanation. When it was over, the leader lay there, drained and broken. The chamber fell silent, and we stumbled out, shaken to our core. The artifacts we sought were there, but the cost was too high. We disbanded, each haunted by our own encounters with that malevolent force. The Black Hills held onto its secrets, and we left with scars that time couldn't heal. The past should have stayed buried, and we were foolish to think we could uncover it without consequence. Alright, so my parents thought I needed some fixing or whatever, sent me to this wilderness therapy thing in the Cascade Range. I'm thinking trees, bugs, maybe some group counseling around a campfire. But man, it turned into something way darker. They dropped me off with these counselors who act all friendly, talking about nature healing and all that crap. So, we start trekking into the woods. Day 1, fine. Day 2, still bearable. But as we go deeper, things start getting weird. The counselors, they're not just into nature stuff. They're obsessed with it. Always talking about the trees having feelings and how the wind is whispering secrets. I'm thinking, okay, cool, hippie vibes. But then they started acting strange, like they knew something I didn't. One night, we're all sitting around the fire, and they start asking personal stuff. Like, really personal. My deepest fears, regrets, all that jazz. I'm uncomfortable, but they insist it's part of the healing process. Whatever, I spill some generic teenage angst. Next day, they separate me from the group. Take me on this solo hike, claiming it's a personal journey or whatever. The forest feels different, like it's closing in on me. I ask them what's up, but they just smile, telling me to connect with nature. Real helpful. The hikes turn into these bizarre rituals. They make me chant weird things, touch the trees like they're sacred. At night, it gets worse. They talk about sacrificing negative energy, and I start feeling like I'm the one they're sacrificing. I notice they're always checking this old, weathered map, leading us deeper into the wilderness. I'm getting freaked out, but they're not giving any real answers. I try to ask the other kids if they've noticed, but they're all so brainwashed, thinking this is some therapeutic paradise. One night, I sneak into the counselor's tent, thinking I'll find answers. And man, did I find them. The map, it's got some strange markings. Turns out, they're leading us to this remote part of the forest, away from any help. I start putting the pieces together. They're not here to help us. They're here for something else, something sinister. The map points to a clearing, and I overhear them talking about a ritual to cleanse the troubled souls. I'm the troubled soul, apparently. Fear kicks in, adrenaline pumping. I decide I gotta bail. No way I'm gonna let them do whatever messed up stuff they're planning. I pack my stuff, wait for the counselors to pass out, and make a run for it. Navigating through the dark forest, I'm scared out of my mind. Twigs snapping, shadows moving, and every sound feels like them catching up. I finally reach a road, hitch a ride to the nearest town, and spill the whole crazy story to the cops. They investigate, find the clearing, but the counselors are gone. Vanished like they were ghosts. No closure, just me, traumatized and haunted by the twisted nature therapy. They still think they're helping troubled kids, but I know the truth. There's something deeper and darker in those woods, and I ain't ever going back. So, me and my friends decided to go camping in Daniel Boone National Forest, just for a chill weekend away from the city. Everything started fine. We set up camp, got the fire going, and cracked open some beers. Just the usual camping stuff. As the night rolled in, we were sitting around the fire, telling stories and laughing. But then we heard it, rustling in the bushes. We brushed it off, thinking it was just some woodland critters. No big deal, right? Well, the rustling kept happening, but we couldn't see anything. That's when I noticed shadows moving in the trees. Just glimpses, like someone was watching us. I got that uneasy feeling, but again, we thought maybe it was our minds playing tricks in the dark. Later on, we start hearing distant voices, hushed whispers. We all go quiet, straining to listen. It wasn't just the wind. No, these were people talking about us. We caught snippets, things like, why are they here, and we don't want them around. Now, I'm getting kinda worried, but my friends, they're brushing it off, thinking it's just other campers nearby. I tried to tell them, nah, this feels off, but they insisted we were fine. So, we decide to hit the hay, hoping whatever weird vibes we felt would be gone in the morning. But man, were we wrong. In the dead of night, we wake up to footsteps around our tents. Real slow and deliberate, like someone was pacing. I poke my head out, and that's when I see them, a family, locals from around here. They looked angry, like we trespassed on sacred ground or something. We can hear them muttering about us ruining their forest, disrespecting their land. One guy in the family, a big burly dude, starts shouting at us, telling us to pack up and leave. We're all freaked out, trying to reason with him, but he's not having it. His eyes, man, they're wild, full of rage. Next thing we know, they start circling our camp, banging on pots and pans, making this god-awful racket. We're sitting there, feeling like we're in some horror movie. My friend tries to call the cops, but there's no signal. Panic sets in. Then they start throwing stuff at us, rocks, sticks, anything they can find. It's chaos. We're huddled in the tents, hoping they'll get bored and leave. But no, they're determined to scare us off. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, they vanish back into the woods. We're left shaken, scared out of our minds. With first light, we pack up in record time and hightail it out of there. As we're leaving, we catch a glimpse of their faces in the daylight, and it's haunting. Angry, twisted expressions that still give me nightmares. We never figured out why they hated us so much, but that camping trip turned into a nightmare none of us will ever forget. I had this idea of hiking the Sierra Nevada mountains solo. Just me, the wilderness, and some peace and quiet. Started out great, you know, the crisp mountain air, the smell of pine trees, the whole deal. I come across this abandoned fire lookout tower, this old rusty thing. Figured it'd be cool to spend the night there. Get a good view, maybe catch the sunset. But man, that night turned into something straight out of a horror flick. I'm settling in, just enjoying the solitude, when I hear this rustling outside. Brush it off at first, thinking it's just the wind. But then, it starts sounding deliberate, like footsteps. And I'm thinking, who else is crazy enough to be out here? I grab my flashlight and peek outside, and that's when I see him, a guy standing in the shadows. Tall, lanky, wearing this messed up hoodie that covered most of his face. My gut does this twist, you know, that feeling that something's off. I ask him what he's doing out here, and he just stares. Doesn't say a word. I'm getting major creep vibes, but I try to play it cool. Maybe he's lost or something. I decide to go back inside the tower, thinking he'll leave, but nope. He starts circling the place. Slow, deliberate footsteps that make my skin crawl. I'm thinking, this is it. I'm in some horror movie, and I'm the dumb guy who didn't bring a weapon. I lock the door, but the guy keeps pacing outside. He starts scratching at the walls, this nails on a chalkboard sound that drills into my head. And then, he starts whispering. Can't make out what he's saying, just this low, menacing murmur. Hours pass, and it feels like I'm in a standoff with a ghost. I can't leave. He won't leave. The isolation of that tower turns into a prison. Finally, he stops. Dead silence. I'm holding my breath, praying he's gone. But then I hear a metallic click. Dude is trying to break in. Panic sets in. I look around, find an old fire axe, gripping it like my life depends on it. He starts banging on the door, demanding to be let in. I'm sweating bullets, heart racing, but I'm not opening that door for some creepy stranger. Then it gets worse. He starts laughing. Not a normal laugh, a twisted, maniacal cackle that echoes through the tower. I'm thinking, this is how horror stories start, right? Dumb guy in a tower, crazy killer outside. Suddenly, he stops. Dead silence again. I'm holding the axe, ready for whatever. And then, I hear his footsteps moving away. Slowly, fading into the distance. Sunrise eventually breaks, and I muster the courage to check outside. The guy's gone, vanished into the mountains. I don't stick around to find out where. I hike down faster than I ever thought possible, looking over my shoulder the whole way. There's this place in the White Mountains, New Hampshire. Me and my girl, we thought it'd be the perfect spot for a romantic getaway. You know, nature, tranquility, all that jazz. We packed our bags, hit the trail, and everything's going great. Until it's not. We're deep in the woods, surrounded by these tall trees that seem to go on forever. The air's getting chilly, and I'm thinking maybe we overestimated our camping skills. But hey, we're a team. We press on. As we hike, we stumble upon this clearing. And there it is, a makeshift campsite hidden in the trees. Tents, tarps, and a bunch of people, more than you'd expect in the middle of nowhere. Now, we're not ones to judge, but something felt off. These folks, they weren't your typical outdoorsy types. More like they stumbled upon the great outdoors while running away from something else. We decide to keep our distance, play it cool. But as we inch closer, we start noticing things, strange equipment, boxes being passed around. It's not a regular camp out, it's some shady business. My girl, she's got this look, like we just walked into a hornet's nest. We consider turning back, but curiosity or stupidity, I don't know which, pushes us to stay hidden and observe. As the sun sets, the atmosphere changes. A couple of guys, rough looking, start talking in hushed tones. We can't hear everything, but keywords like shipment, exchange, and keep quiet make it clear we're in way over our heads. I'm sweating bullets, realizing we're witnessing something we shouldn't. The campfire flickers, casting eerie shadows on their faces. They're not here for a nature retreat, they're here for business. Suddenly, one of them looks our way. Panic sets in, like deer caught in headlights. We scramble to hide, heartbeats pounding in our ears. My girl's grip tightens on my arm. I can feel her fear. They start moving towards us, flashlights cutting through the darkness. We're crouched behind bushes, hearts racing, trying not to make a sound. The moon's our only ally, casting just enough shadows to keep us hidden. A twig snaps under someone's boot. My breath catches. They're close. My girl squeezes my hand. I can tell she's praying they don't find us. The guys pass by, inches away from our hiding spot. I'm holding my breath, praying they don't hear the pounding of our hearts. They continue, unaware that a couple of innocent campers are spying on their not-so-innocent operation. We wait, frozen, until their voices fade into the distance. Only then do we dare to move. We backtrack, silently retracing our steps, making damn sure we're not followed. We keep going until we're a safe distance away. It's pitch black now, and the only sounds are the night critters and our nervous laughter, a mix of relief and disbelief. We find our way back to the main trail, vowing never to venture off the beaten path again. The woods, once serene and inviting, now feel haunted. We hike out of there like our lives depend on it. And maybe they did. As we reach the trailhead, the distant echoes of those men linger in our minds. We don't look back. We drive away, leaving behind the shadows of the White Mountains and the secrets hidden within. We decide to make this documentary, Thought we'd delve into the whole logging scene up in the Superior National Forest, Minnesota. Seemed like a pretty interesting subject. Boy, we had no clue what we were getting into. We get to this remote logging camp, surrounded by trees that seem to stretch on forever. The folks there, they're not your friendly lumberjack types. Nah, they've got this vibe, like they're hiding something. The crew sets up the gear, cameras rolling, capturing the daily grind. We interview the workers, asking about the logging practices, the environmental impact, the whole deal. They're tight-lipped, nervous, like they're on edge about something. Late one evening, we're around the campfire, trying to get more info. A guy, rough around the edges, spills a little. Starts talking about this forbidden zone, a part of the forest the company doesn't touch. Naturally, our interest spikes. Forbidden zone? Sounds like there's a story there. We convince the guy to be our guide, to take us where no cameras have gone before. So, it's nighttime. We sneak out, guided by flashlights and hushed whispers. We enter this off-limits territory, and the air gets heavy. Trees close in, shadows dance, and I can sense the crew's anxiety rising. We stumble upon this clearing, and there it is, a massive pit, filled with old machinery, logs, and something else. Can't quite make it out in the dark. We decide to come back in daylight, get a better look. Next morning, we return to the pit. And that something else? Turns out it's barrels, tons of them. Not logs, not machinery, barrels stacked on top of each other. Curiosity gets the best of us. We crack one open, and the stench hits us. Chemicals, something toxic. Panic sets in. What the hell have we stumbled upon? A secret dump site? Environmental disaster? The crew's uneasy, but we keep going. Documentarians, right? The barrels stretch on, an unholy graveyard of toxic waste hidden in the heart of the forest. Suddenly, we're surrounded. Men, the same ones we interviewed, emerge from the trees. Angry eyes, harsh whispers. They've been watching us, knew we found their dirty little secret. The crew's cameras keep rolling, catching the tension, the fear. They're shouting, accusing us of trespassing, threatening to make us disappear. We're herded back to camp, surrounded by these hostile loggers. They're serious, man, like they've got something to protect, something worth killing for. They warn us, forget what you saw, or else. We pack up, hightail it out of there. Back in the safety of our van, we watch the footage. The fear in our eyes, the confrontation with those guys, it's chilling. This wasn't the documentary we set out to make. It's a horror show, a brush with danger, a glimpse into a world that'll haunt our nightmares. We report the illegal dumping, share the footage, but who knows what happens? Maybe justice prevails, maybe they keep doing their dirty work. One thing's for sure, we won't be going back. We were heading to Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania, all enthusiastic about our ecological research. Studying nature, looking at trees and bugs, the usual stuff. So, We set up camp, have our tents pitched, and start taking samples. All good, normal scientist stuff. Until one evening, we're sitting around the fire, discussing data and observations. Suddenly, the wind changes, and it feels like the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Strange, I think, but hey, it's the forest, right? Then we hear it, this low, guttural growl. Not an animal, more like something ancient, something that shouldn't be disturbed. We glance at each other, uneasy. Then, the trees start to shake. Not like a breeze, but violently. We're in the middle of the forest, and there's no storm predicted. Fear creeps in. We're supposed to be in control, understand what's going on. Next thing, shadows move between the trees, figures in the darkness. Humanoid, but not quite right. They're distant, but the firelight flickers off their eyes, reflecting a glow that sends shivers down our spines. We grab flashlights, thinking it's just some locals messing with us. But these figures, they vanish as soon as we direct the light towards them. No footsteps, no rustling leaves. Gone. We decide it's a prank, some locals trying to spook the city scientists. But as the night deepens, it gets worse. The growls intensify, echoing through the forest. The shadows come closer, almost teasing us, staying just beyond the reach of our lights. We try to laugh it off, tell ourselves it's just a bear or some kids playing games. But we all feel it, this underlying sense of dread, a gut feeling that something's not right. Around midnight, the forest falls silent. Dead silent. No insects, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive stillness. We huddle in our tents, fear gnawing at us. It's like nature itself is holding its breath, waiting. Then it happens. A sudden gust of wind tears through the camp, extinguishing the fire. We're in darkness, and the shadows, they're right there, inches away from our tents. We hear whispers, a language we can't understand, but it's ancient, otherworldly. Panic sets in. We scramble, fumbling for flashlights, trying to make sense of the shadows surrounding us. The growls turn into a cacophony, a symphony of unearthly sounds. And then, the ground trembles, like the forest is alive, breathing. Suddenly, we get it. We've disturbed something ancient, something that's been here long before us. Our ecological research has woken up an ancient force, a guardian of the forest, and it's not happy. The whispers get louder, almost screams now, and the shadows converge on us. We can see their faces, twisted and contorted. Fear has us paralyzed. And then, as soon as it began, it stops. The wind dies down, the shadows retreat, and the forest comes back to life. Birds chirp, insects buzz, and we're left in the aftermath of whatever we've just unleashed. At first light, we pack up, now a word spoken. Our research abandoned, we hightail it out of there. We're scientists, but there are things science can't explain, forces older and more powerful than anything we understand. As we leave the Allegheny National Forest, I can't shake the feeling that we've glimpsed something beyond our comprehension. The forest keeps its secrets, and maybe, just maybe, we're better off not knowing. So, I decided to check out this folk festival in Jefferson National Forest, Virginia. You know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Folk music, campfires, people having a good time, sounded like a great way to spend the weekend. I get there, and everything seems normal. People singing, playing guitars, just enjoying the outdoors. I join in, clapping along, thinking I've stumbled upon a hidden gem of a festival. As the night progresses, though, things start getting weird. The music takes on this eerie tone, and people start forming these odd circles around the bonfires. I'm thinking it's some quirky tradition, part of the whole folk vibe. Then, they start chanting. Not your typical festival sing-along, mind you. It's like this ancient language, something primal. I can't understand a word, but it sends shivers down my spine. Curiosity gets the better of me, and I edge closer to one of the circles. The people are swaying, eyes closed, lost in this ritual. It's not the fun-loving atmosphere I signed up for, but hey, maybe it's some local tradition. That's when I notice something. The firelight reflects off their eyes, and they're not just closed, they're rolled back. The chanting gets louder, almost hypnotic. I'm not sure if it's the melody or something more sinister. As I'm about to step away, someone grabs my arm. It's one of the festival goers, this wild look in their eyes. They mutter something about being chosen, about the forest having secrets. Suddenly, I feel exposed, like I've stumbled into something I shouldn't have. The chanting reaches a crescendo, and the atmosphere becomes charged, heavy with an unsettling energy. That's when it hits me. This festival isn't about celebrating folk music, it's a front for something else. The people around me aren't just revelers, they're part of some twisted ritual, a celebration of darkness hidden beneath the guise of folk festivities. I manage to slip away from the person who grabbed me, heart pounding, and start making my way through the forest. The chanting follows me, echoing through the trees. Panic sets in as I realize I'm lost, disoriented in the labyrinth of the Jefferson National Forest. I hear footsteps behind me, branches snapping, and I start running. The festival has become a nightmare, a maze of shadows and unnatural sounds. Fear clings to me like a second skin. Eventually, I stumble upon a clearing, and there, in the center, is this ancient-looking altar. Symbols are carved into the surrounding trees, symbols that I can't comprehend. It's like stumbling onto the set of some horror movie. The chanting reaches a fever pitch, and the festival goers surround me, eyes glazed over, hands raised. I'm frozen, trapped in this nightmare. I'm not a part of their ritual, but I've become an unwilling witness to something ancient and malevolent. I can't escape the forest. It's like the trees themselves are closing in. The shadows dance around me, and the chanting becomes a cacophony of madness. I close my eyes, hoping to wake up from this nightmare. When I open them again, the forest is silent. The festival goers have vanished, leaving me alone in the clearing. The altar remains, a haunting reminder of the horrors hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly innocent folk festival. I stumble my way out of the forest, disoriented and shaken. The music is replaced by the night sounds of crickets, but the echoes of the ritual linger in my mind. The Jefferson National Forest, once a place of natural beauty, now holds a darkness that I can't erase. I leave that festival with a newfound fear of the unknown, haunted by the realization that sometimes the things we stumble upon are better left undiscovered. So, me and my buddies, we're all into geocaching. The whole treasure hunt thing with GPS and coordinates. It's a blast, usually. We decide to hit up Shawnee National Forest in Illinois for our next adventure. We're deep in the forest, following these coordinates, feeling like modern-day pirates. The thrill of the hunt, the excitement, it's all part of the geocaching experience. The day's going great until we stumble upon this one cache that's different. The coordinates lead us to an isolated spot, off the beaten path. It's eerie, the air feels heavy. We locate the cache, expecting the usual trinkets, maybe a logbook to sign. But this one's weird. Inside, there's no logbook, just a USB drive. Strange, right? Curiosity gets the better of us, and we plug the drive into a laptop, It's filled with videos, shaky camera footage of people in the forest. At first, we think it's just some weird art project or something. Then, we notice a pattern. The people in the videos are us, me and my buddies. We're freaked out, thinking someone's stalking us. The videos are from different angles, different days. Whoever made this knew our every move. Panic sets in as we realize we're being watched, but we have no clue who's behind it. We decide to leave, but that's when things take a dark turn. As we backtrack through the forest, we start hearing whispers. Not friendly, "Hey, how's it going?" whispers, chilling, sinister ones. It's like the trees themselves are talking. We quicken our pace, but the whispers follow. Paranoia sinks in, every rustle of leaves feels like a threat. We can't shake the feeling of being watched, hunted even. We're just a bunch of geocachers, not equipped to deal with this kind of horror movie scenario. The forest, once a place of excitement, becomes a labyrinth of dread. We stumble upon makeshift shrines, photos of us, the videos, screenshots, all arranged like some sick art installation. It's like we're caught in someone's sick obsession. Suddenly, figures emerge from the shadows, people wearing masks, their eyes glaring through the eye holes. We freeze, realizing this isn't a game anymore. These aren't fellow geocachers, they're something else entirely. The masked figures don't say a word. They just stand there, staring. We're trapped, surrounded by this ominous group, and the forest, once vibrant, feels like a cage closing in on us. Fear grips us. We're at the mercy of whatever sick game these people are playing. One of them steps forward, handing us a USB drive identical to the one we found in the cache. It's a message: they've been watching us, and now they're inviting us to join their twisted voyeuristic game. We're terrified, not knowing if these people are dangerous or just messing with our heads. We run, sprinting through the forest, our hearts pounding. We hear their laughter behind us, echoing through the trees. Eventually, we make it back to civilization, but the paranoia lingers. Every time we hear a whisper or see a masked face in a crowd, the fear resurfaces. We don't know who those people are or what sick satisfaction they gain from watching us. From that day on, geocaching lost its charm. The thrill turned into a haunting memory, a reminder that even in the seemingly innocent world of treasure hunting, darkness can lurk, and you might stumble upon something you're not meant to find. I thought a solo mountain biking trip in Green Mountain National Forest, Vermont, would be an epic adventure. You know, the thrill of conquering rugged trails, the fresh air, all that good stuff. Little did I know, it would turn into a nightmare. It started off great, the wind in my face as I cruised through the dense forest. I was having the time of my life, navigating the twists and turns, feeling like I owned the trail. That is until I stumbled upon a clearing where a group of locals gathered. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe they were just enjoying the day like me. But as I approached, the atmosphere shifted. Their eyes bore into me, and a silence settled over the clearing. Awkward, uncomfortable, but I brushed it off, thinking I was being paranoid. I continued my ride, but I noticed them following me. Not directly, but they kept appearing at various points along the trail. It was like they claimed the forest as their territory, and I was the intruder. My excitement turned to unease. I pedaled faster, trying to shake them off, but they were persistent. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, there they were, lingering in the shadows. It felt like a game, but I didn't know the rules. Fear began to creep in as their silent presence became more ominous. As I reached a particularly dense part of the forest, I decided to take a detour, hoping to lose them. The trees closed in around me, and the air grew heavy. I could hear the distant crunch of leaves, but I couldn't tell if it was my pursuers or just the natural sounds of the woods. Suddenly, my tire hit something, and I went flying over the handlebars. Pain shot through my body as I struggled to get up. That's when I noticed the trap, a thin wire stretched across the trail, nearly invisible. Someone set it up to catch me. Fear turned to panic. I needed to get out of there, but the pain in my leg made it difficult to pedal. As I limped along the trail, I heard whispers behind me. They weren't the wind rustling through the leaves, they were sinister voices. I didn't know who these people were or what they wanted, but it was clear they didn't want me there. The forest, once a playground, now felt like a maze of danger. I felt hunted, pursued by an unseen threat. My heart pounded as I navigated the trail, each turn more uncertain than the last. The whispers grew louder, mocking, taunting. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't risk making noise. I needed to escape their twisted game. Eventually, I stumbled upon a ranger station. Relief washed over me as I sought help, explaining the bizarre encounter. The ranger seemed concerned, mentioning there were some locals who considered the forest their turf. He offered to escort me out, and as we left, I could still feel eyes on us. The locals remained hidden, their presence lingering like a dark cloud. I left the forest, shaken and scarred by an ordeal that turned my dream adventure into a heart-pounding nightmare. From that day on, the thrill of mountain biking became tinged with fear. The woods, once a place of solitude and joy, transformed into a haunting memory of a group of locals who viewed their territory as off-limits to outsiders. We thought a river canoeing trip in the Boundary Waters, Minnesota, would be a blast. You know, nature, camaraderie, all that good stuff. Little did we know, it was going to be a descent into chaos. It started off great. The sun glistened on the water as we paddled through the serene landscape. We were a group of friends, looking for an adventure, seeking the thrill of the untamed river. The Boundary Waters seemed like the perfect place. As we navigated the twists and turns, we heard distant voices. At first, we dismissed it, thinking it was just the echoes of the wilderness. But the voices grew louder, and we soon spotted another group on the riverbank. They weren't fellow nature enthusiasts. No, these were environmental extremists, armed with signs and fervent beliefs. We had unintentionally crossed paths with a protest against some perceived ecological injustice. We tried to steer clear, focusing on our journey, hoping they'd ignore us. Wishful thinking. As we paddled away, their shouts intensified. Words like intruders and environmental criminals echoed through the trees. Ignoring them, we pressed on, but they started following us along the riverbank. It felt like we were in a bad movie. They accused us of destroying the environment, of being complicit in some ecological crime we had no idea about. As tension escalated, they began blocking our way, trying to halt our progress. Panic set in. We were in the middle of a confrontation we never signed up for. They circled us, their fervor turning into something darker. One of them approached our canoe, yelling about saving the planet. It wasn't a friendly conversation. They seemed convinced that our very presence on the river was an act of aggression against nature. As the argument reached a fever pitch, things took a violent turn. Rocks flew through the air, aimed at our canoes. We paddled faster, desperate to escape this madness. Fear gripped us as we heard their angry shouts fading into the distance. But they weren't done. We rounded a bend, hoping for safety, only to find them waiting further downstream. It was like they knew the river better than us. They were relentless, fueled by a misguided sense of righteousness. We had no choice but to paddle harder, to outpace them and put distance between us. The once tranquil waters became a battleground. Our adventure turned into a race for survival against a group of fanatics who believed they were saving the world. Eventually, their shouts faded, and we found a moment of respite. We reached our destination shaken, our river expedition forever marred by the encounter with those extremists. It wasn't the untouched wilderness we had envisioned, but a battleground where ideology clashed with reality. I loved mushrooms. Not the store-bought ones. I was into foraging wild ones. It was my passion. So, I packed my gear and headed to Deschutes National Forest, Oregon. The air was crisp as I walked deeper into the woods, eyes scanning the forest floor for that elusive fungi. The quiet rustle of leaves was my soundtrack, and I was lost in my foraging, oblivious to what was happening around me. Little did I know, I was stepping into a world I shouldn't have. I stumbled upon a clearing where some people in serious-looking gear were huddled around. Curiosity got the better of me, and I inched closer. They weren't just campers, they were up to something. Something shady. Trying to be stealthy, I accidentally stepped on a twig. Snap. They turned, and their eyes locked onto mine. It was like a scene from a thriller. I felt a shiver down my spine as their cold stares met mine. Instead of just staring, they approached me. I tried to act casual, like I was just another wanderer lost in the forest. But they weren't buying it. They asked what I was doing there. I stuttered, explaining my mushroom passion, thinking it might ease the tension. It didn't. One of them, a burly guy with a serious expression, stepped forward. He said I'd seen too much, and I could feel the noose tightening around my little adventure. I tried to back away, but they weren't having it. They were involved in some covert operation, and I, with my mushroom basket and all, was now a problem they needed to deal with. Panic set in as I realized I was in way over my head. They cornered me, and I could sense the danger. They weren't here for a friendly chat. Fear crawled up my spine like 1,000 spiders. My mind raced, wondering if they'd let me go or if I'd be a missing person in these dense woods. I pleaded, saying I wouldn't tell a soul, but they weren't interested in negotiations. Suddenly, I was surrounded. I could smell the metallic tang of fear, and my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. One of them grabbed my arm, demanding to know if I had any recording devices. I shook my head frantically, my heart in my throat. They were agitated, worried about nobody stumbling upon their secret. I thought about making a run for it, but the forest was a labyrinth, and they knew it better than I did. I felt like a pawn in their sinister game, and there was no escape. They were ruthless, and I was just a guy who loved mushrooms too much. They decided to let me go, but not without a warning. A cold voice cut through the forest air, telling me to forget what I saw, or there'd be consequences. I nodded, words stuck in my throat. I stumbled back into the forest, heart still racing. Every rustle of leaves sounded like their footsteps behind me. My foraging adventure turned into a dance with danger, a secret operation in the woods that I should have never interfered with. I kept walking, but the forest felt different. The mushrooms, once my allies, now seemed like silent witnesses to a sinister plot. We decided to take a break from the city and camp in the Chattahoochee National Forest. The air was thick with the smell of pine, and the night sky promised a canvas of stars. Little did we know, our peaceful getaway would turn into a night we'd never forget. We set up our tent in a quiet clearing, surrounded by the hum of crickets. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the trees. It felt idyllic until we noticed distant murmurs echoing through the forest. Curiosity got the best of us, and we followed the sound. Through the dense foliage, we stumbled upon a moonlit clearing where an eerie ritual was underway. Cloaked figures surrounded a makeshift altar, their faces hidden in the shadows. Fear gripped us as we watched the ceremony unfold. The air thickened with an otherworldly tension, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Our whispered conversations debated whether to stay or escape quietly. One of them noticed us. Time stood still as their hooded heads turned in unison, their eyes reflecting the moonlight. Panic surged through us, urging us to retreat, but our limbs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. They beckoned us to join, their gestures more command than invitation. We exchanged terrified glances, realizing we'd stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. The atmosphere crackled with an unsettling energy. Reluctantly, we stepped forward, hesitant shadows in their ritualistic dance. Symbols were etched in the soil, and the air hummed with a strange resonance. The flickering torchlight painted grotesque silhouettes on the trees. Their leader, a figure draped in a crimson robe, chanted in an ancient tongue. We couldn't comprehend the words, but their malevolence sent shivers down our spines. A sacrificial intent hung in the air, and we were the unwitting audience. Desperation clawed at us, urging escape, but the oppressive atmosphere held us captive. The ritual reached a climax, and we realized the gravity of the situation. We were outsiders entangled in a ritual with no benign purpose. As the moon reached its zenith, they turned their attention towards us. Dread settled in as the hooded figures circled, closing the gap. We were powerless against their intentions, caught in a nightmare woven by their clandestine ceremony. Without warning, they lunged. Panic fueled our flight, and we sprinted through the darkened forest. Branches scratched at us, and the distant echoes of their chants fueled our terror. It was a race against the unknown, and the forest seemed to conspire against our escape. The chilling realization struck: they weren't mere campfire storytellers. Their rituals weren't folklore, they were a sinister reality. We stumbled through the underbrush, guided by the moon's feeble glow, haunted by the possibility of their pursuit. Exhaustion slowed us, but fear propelled us forward. The moonlit forest, once a tranquil haven, became a labyrinth of nightmares. We dared not look back, convinced that malevolent eyes followed our every move. Eventually, we stumbled back into our campsite, gasping for breath. The distant echoes of their chants faded, leaving us trembling under the feeble light of our dying campfire. The night remained restless, haunted by the revelation that within the seemingly serene Chattahoochee National Forest, a sinister underbelly hid in plain sight. We were a bunch of bird enthusiasts, hoping to spend a serene day in the Siuslaw National Forest, Oregon. Our binoculars in hand, we set out on the well-trodden trails, eager to spot the diverse avian residents of the region. The forest echoed with the chirping and tweeting of birds, a symphony that set the perfect backdrop for our expedition. Little did we know that our peaceful bird-watching day would turn into a nightmare. As we ventured deeper into the woods, we noticed an unsettling pattern. The usual cacophony of bird calls began to dwindle. An eerie silence replaced the once lively soundscape. We exchanged puzzled glances, wondering what could cause such a sudden disturbance. Our curiosity led us to a secluded clearing where we stumbled upon a man clad in camouflage. He seemed engrossed in setting up peculiar contraptions designed to disrupt the natural soundscape. A knot formed in my stomach as I realized the intent behind his actions. The man noticed us and flashed a sinister smile. We cautiously approached, questioning his disruptive activities. His response was cryptic, a disturbing mix of paranoia and hostility. He believed the forest was conspiring against him, and he intended to silence its supposed secrets. Tensions rose as we tried to reason with the stranger, urging him to reconsider his actions. However, reason seemed lost on him. He became increasingly agitated, convinced that we were allied with the forest against him. The once peaceful atmosphere morphed into a battleground. The man's eyes betrayed a manic determination, and his actions became increasingly erratic. He brandished a knife, a stark escalation that sent shivers down our spines. We were caught in a confrontation with a disturbed individual, isolated in the heart of the forest. The very nature we sought to admire had become the stage for a perilous encounter. Fear gripped us as the man circled us, his intentions veering toward violence. The forest, once a sanctuary, transformed into a maze of uncertainty. Every rustle of leaves and snapping twig amplified our paranoia. The man's fervent belief in the forest's conspiracy made him unpredictable, a ticking time bomb in our midst. Escape became our only priority. We retreated cautiously, eyes fixed on the knife-wielding stranger. The once familiar trails felt like a labyrinth, and every step echoed with the fear of what might unfold. Our pleas for reason fell on deaf ears. The man's paranoia fueled his aggression, and our group became a target for his misguided vendetta against the imagined conspiracies of the forest. The cacophony of bird calls that once serenaded us had now been replaced by the ominous drumming of our footsteps. The forest, once a place of solace, had become a theater of terror. We navigated its winding trails with the urgency of survival, each turn potentially leading to a dead end or a face-to-face encounter with the disturbed man. The distant chirping of birds became a haunting reminder of what was at stake. The disrupted soundscape, an unintended consequence of the man's actions, mirrored the chaos that had unfolded in the once tranquil forest. The man's disturbing presence lingered in every shadow, an unpredictable force threatening the very essence of our peaceful expedition. Our escape from the forest felt like a victory against the encroaching darkness. The disturbed man remained a haunting figure in our memories, a stark reminder that even in the serene embrace of nature, the human element could unleash horrors beyond our wildest imagination. The Siuslaw National Forest, once a haven for bird watchers, had become a battleground of survival against a threat that wore a human face. I needed a break from it all, the constant hum of everyday life, the people, the noise. So, I decided to escape to the Coconino National Forest in Arizona, hoping the vast wilderness would offer the solitude I craved. Armed with nothing but my backpack and a map, I ventured into the unknown, straying off the marked trails in search of that elusive peace. The dense forest surrounded me, towering trees creating a natural canopy that muted the outside world. At first, it felt liberating. The stillness was a stark contrast to the chaos I left behind. But as I delved deeper, an uneasiness settled in. The quiet, once serene, now felt oppressive, like a weight pressing down on me. I was lost in my thoughts, navigating the uneven terrain when a subtle rustle in the bushes caught my attention. Brushing it off as wildlife, I continued, the crunching of leaves beneath my boots the only sound in the secluded woods. That's when it started, the feeling of being watched. It crawled up my spine, a primal instinct telling me I wasn't alone. As I walked, the sensation of eyes on me persisted. I glanced around, half expecting to find another hiker sharing the solitude. But the forest remained silent, except for the rhythmic thud of my own footsteps. My senses heightened, every snap of a twig or distant rustle amplifying the growing tension. The unease reached its peak when I stumbled upon a makeshift campsite hidden among the trees. A tattered tent and remnants of a fire suggested someone had been there recently. Anxiety knotted in my stomach. Who else could be wandering these woods? I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the feeling of impending danger. The dense foliage seemed to close in, sunlight struggling to penetrate the thick canopy. The quiet became suffocating, broken only by the occasional creak of branches overhead. It was then that I noticed him, a shadow lurking at the periphery of my vision. I turned, catching a glimpse of a solitary figure blending with the trees. Panic set in as I realized I was being followed. The man, disheveled and gaunt, stared at me with vacant eyes. A chill ran down my spine. His presence exuded a malevolence that transcended words. I changed directions, hoping to lose him in the labyrinth of trees. Yet, each time I glanced over my shoulder, he was there, always at a distance but never too far. The dense foliage seemed to conspire with him, twisting into a confusing maze that disoriented me further. Fear became my constant companion. I quickened my pace, feeling the weight of his gaze on my back. The forest, once a refuge, now felt like a trap closing in on me. My breaths were labored, my heart pounding in my chest as I navigated the labyrinth of trees, each step a struggle against the ever-present threat. As the sunlight waned, casting eerie shadows among the trees, I knew I couldn't outrun him forever. The forest, once a sanctuary, had become a battleground for my survival. I stumbled over roots and rocks, my legs aching with exertion, my mind racing to comprehend the peril I found myself in. I finally burst through the trees into a small clearing, the last rays of sunlight casting long shadows. Gasping for breath, I dared to look back. The man emerged from the shadows, his malevolent gaze fixed on me. The distance between us had shortened, his intentions no longer veiled. Panic set in as I realized escape was futile. In that isolated clearing, I confronted the stark reality. The solitude I sought had become a perilous encounter with a stranger whose intentions were anything but benign. There I was, signed up as a counselor for a youth camp in the Angeles National Forest. Seemed like a good gig, you know, a chance to spend some time outdoors, help kids connect with nature, the whole shebang. Little did I know what I was getting into. The camp had this eerie vibe from the start. The organizers were these strange, secretive types, always whispering in hushed tones, exchanging glances that made my skin crawl. But you gotta earn your bread, right? So, I shrugged off the discomfort and got on with it. We had a bunch of kids, all excited about the prospect of roughing it in the gray outdoors. They were full of energy, their enthusiasm contagious. But as the days went by, I started noticing odd things. Late-night meetings between the organizers, strange symbols carved into trees, nothing concrete, just a series of weird coincidences. One night, unable to shake off my unease, I decided to do a bit of snooping. Call it intuition or paranoia, but something felt off. I followed one of the organizers into the woods, trying my best to be stealthy. As I approached, their voices grew louder. Turns out, they weren't planning some innocent camping games. They were talking about the kids, my kids. Mentioning rituals, ceremonies, and some twisted notion of enlightenment. My gut twisted into knots as I eavesdropped on their disturbing plans. It was clear these weren't your run-of-the-mill camp activities. This was something dark, something that sent shivers down my spine. I had to do something, had to protect those kids from whatever horrors awaited them. With my heart pounding, I slipped away from the clandestine meeting, my mind racing to figure out the next move. I couldn't go to the authorities, not without concrete evidence. So, I decided to confront them, to get them to spill the beans. The next day, as we led the kids on a hike through the forest, I took one of the organizers aside. The tension was palpable as I confronted them about their sinister agenda. They stared at me with cold, calculating eyes, confirming my worst fears. This wasn't about nature appreciation or team building. It was about something much darker. As the day wore on, the camp organizers grew increasingly hostile. They realized I was onto them, disrupting their twisted plans. That night, I kept a close watch on the kids, my nerves on edge. The organizers, fueled by a malevolent determination, seemed ready to unleash whatever horror they had in store. Unable to trust anyone, I decided to take matters into my own hands. In the dead of night, I gathered the kids, explaining the danger they were in. Fear and confusion flickered in their eyes as I led them away from the campsite, away from the looming threat that lurked in the shadows. We trekked through the dense forest, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sending shivers down our spines. The kids, wide-eyed and terrified, followed me in silence. We couldn't afford to make a sound. Any noise might draw the attention of those who sought to exploit the innocence of these unsuspecting children. As we trudged through the dark, the distant echoes of chanting and drumbeats confirmed the malevolent nature of the camp organizers. They were conducting some twisted ceremony, oblivious to our escape. The forest, once a sanctuary, became a labyrinth of fear, the trees towering over us like silent witnesses to our desperate flight. Eventually, we stumbled upon a ranger station. Relief washed over me as we sought refuge, finally out of the clutches of those sinister organizers. The authorities were notified, investigations were launched, and the truth emerged, a dark underbelly of exploitation masked by the guise of a youth camp. I left that place, haunted by the knowledge of what could have transpired if I hadn't stumbled upon their plans. The Angeles National Forest, once a backdrop for innocence, became a battleground where the fight for the safety of those kids unfolded. The horror was real, grounded in the sinister motives of humans who had concealed their malevolence beneath the veneer of a seemingly innocent camp in the woods. So, there I was, thinking a cozy cabin in the Adirondack Mountains would be the perfect spot for some alone time, to get those creative juices flowing. A quiet place, away from the hustle, where the only interruptions would be the rustle of leaves and the occasional call of some woodland creature. Little did I know, that cabin had its own story to tell, and it wasn't the kind you find in my novels. The cabin looked like something out of a postcard, all quaint and surrounded by a sea of trees. Perfect, I thought. I dragged my suitcase inside, ready to dive into a world of words. But as I settled in, something felt off, like the air held secrets. In the corner, I found a stack of dusty old journals. Figured the previous tenant left them behind. Curiosity got the better of me, and I cracked one open. Scribbles filled the pages, rambles of someone who seemed tangled in their own thoughts. It was unsettling, but I couldn't stop reading. The journals painted a picture of a troubled soul, someone who felt the weight of something sinister. The author described strange happenings, shadows in the woods, and voices that echoed through the trees. It was like a horror story, but this wasn't fiction. It was the unsettling reality of the person who'd lived in that cabin. As I delved deeper, the entries became more disturbing. The writer spoke of a dark figure lurking at the edge of the forest, watching, waiting. They questioned their sanity, and the isolation seemed to have twisted their perception of reality. The cabin, once a haven, became a prison of paranoia. The more I read, the more the atmosphere in that cabin shifted. The woods, once serene, now felt like they held secrets darker than the ink on those pages. It was as if the twisted thoughts of the previous tenants seeped into the very walls. Nightfall brought an eerie silence, broken only by the creaks of the cabin. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The journals painted a portrait of someone tormented, and it felt like their presence lingered, a ghostly whisper echoing through the rooms. Then, things took a turn for the worse. The entries grew frantic, detailing a descent into madness. The writer spoke of strange rituals, encounters with shadowy figures, and a growing obsession with something beyond human understanding. It was like the cabin itself had absorbed their fears, and now those fears hung in the air like a thick fog. Sleep became a distant friend as the words in the journals burrowed into my mind. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind, felt like a manifestation of the darkness described in those pages. I questioned my decision to seek solitude in that desolate cabin. The climax of the journals hit like a punch to the gut. The writer spoke of a presence within the cabin, something malevolent that fed on their fear. It wasn't just a story anymore, it was a warning etched in shaky handwriting. I couldn't escape the feeling that the darkness described was now aware of my presence. I tried to shake off the unease, to convince myself it was just words on paper. But as I wandered through the woods, I couldn't escape the sensation of being watched. Shadows danced on the periphery of my vision, and the once welcoming trees now seemed to twist into grotesque forms. One night, I awoke to the sound of whispers. Not the kind of whispers you dismiss as the wind's playful trick. These were guttural, unnatural. Fear gripped me as I realized I wasn't alone in that cabin. The stories in the journals weren't fiction, they were a prelude to the horror I was now living. I stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, a space filled with artifacts that echoed the writer's descent into madness. It was like stepping into a nightmare, occult symbols, strange talismans, and relics that hinted at a dark ritual. The cabin's history wasn't just written in words, it was etched in the very fabric of the place. With each passing night, the presence within the cabin intensified. Whispers turned to chilling laughter, and shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. I felt like a character in one of my own horror novels, trapped in a narrative that twisted reality. I couldn't shake the feeling that the previous tenant's torment had become a malevolent force. It wasn't just the journals anymore, it was a living nightmare that preyed on the vulnerability of solitude. The walls held secrets, and the shadows whispered a tale of a darkness that transcended the written word. In a desperate attempt to escape, I packed my bags, abandoning the cabin that had become a prison. But as I walked away, I couldn't escape the sensation that the darkness clung to me like a relentless shadow. The journals, the artifacts, the tormented history of that cabin, it became a part of me, a story that would haunt my every waking moment. The Adirondack Mountains, once a picturesque backdrop, now felt like a landscape of lingering horror. The woods seemed to echo with the tortured cries of the previous tenant, and the cabin stood as a silent witness to a tale that transcended the boundaries of fiction and reality. As I left that desolate place, the weight of the stories I'd uncovered bore down on me. The cabin, with its unsettling history, faded in the distance. But the darkness lingered, an indelible mark on my soul. The Adirondack Mountains, once a retreat for inspiration, became a haunting memory of a horror that words could only begin to describe.